You're about to hear about fueling for running and why carbs are awesome, why running shouldn't feel too hard, how we can close the ultra running gender gap, why we need more media with everyday runner stories like yours, running through perimenopause, and so much more. Buckle up. This is See Her Outside, Stories from Women Who Adventure. I'm your host, Angie Lake. Last Saturday, 500 women towed the start line at Wild Woman Trail Runs in Trout Lake, Washington. Many of them were there to run their first ever ultramarathon. Personally, I've been invested in 15 particular runners for the past few months, those who made up the first 50K Sisterhood. At the Cairn Project, we envisioned a community where women could come together to get everything they needed to run their first ultra. But we wanted more than that. We wanted these women to feel inspired to share their voices and their truest stories about why running even matters to them, why train for an ultra. And we wanted these women to create opportunities for other women to toe the line in the future. The first 50K Sisterhood hooked up 15 women with training, gear, and mentorship to prepare for the Wild Woman 50K in June 2026. As they trained and shared stories, these women fundraised $23,000 together to pay it forward to other girls and women who deserve time on trails. Running can look on the outside like an individual sport, but the first 50K Sisterhood was an entirely team experience. We were supported by incredible humans and brands who wanted to be a part of these women's running stories. One of our supporters was Microcosm Coaching. Zoë Rom and TJ David designed a training plan for our runners and gave them group coaching all through spring to get them physically and mentally ready for this feat, a feat that you'll hear more about once I have the words to explain what happened a few days ago. Microcosm Coaching works with endurance athletes across the world while focusing on the fact that we're humans with busy, complex lives. I was so impressed with the care and intention that Zoë and TJ gave to the sisterhood, and I knew that Zoë would make a fantastic guest for the See Her Outside podcast. Zoë Rom is a journalist and podcast host based in Carbondale, Colorado. She co-hosts Your Diet Sucks, a podcast with Kylie Van Horn that brings an evidence-based lens to diet culture in endurance sports. Her journalism focuses on public lands and the environment. She co-hosts the Trailhead podcast with Brendan Leonard, and she's co-author with Tina Muir of Becoming a Sustainable Runner. Zoe's a competitive ultramarathoner herself, racing primarily 100-mile distances with a second-place finish at the Leadville 100 in 2024. And she coaches through Microcosm Coaching, so our first 50K Sisterhood runners got to see how awesome she is. I asked Zoë about her first experiences with running.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a series of somewhat false starts. I actually tried out for my high school cross country team and didn't make the cut. They couldn't technically cut me. It was a no cut team, but they were like, "You're amazing. What if you tried the high jump in the spring instead?" Which is a very nice way of saying, like, dear God, please don't walk on to our cross country team. But I ended up playing high school volleyball. I was not much of an athlete. I didn't think of myself as an athlete. I was pretty committed to the bench. Like every year at award ceremonies, I would win most improved, which is polite high school for we don't have a real award for you. You're not actually that good at things. And when high school volleyball was ending, I realized I was like, oh, I don't have like a way of being active now. Like I'm not going to play pickup volleyball on the weekends. So I started kind of trying to run like about a mile at a time. I would go to the track at my high school wearing my volleyball shoes because they were the only athletic shoes I had because not an athlete. And I would try to just like see how many laps I could get around the track without walking. And at the beginning, it was not very many. I distinctly remember the first day I was able to string 4 laps together and ran like my first ever mile all at the same time. And that was amazing. Like that was such a big day for me. And then in college, I worked at a run store. Things escalated quickly. And I was part of this half marathon training group where I ended up doing my first ever 10-mile run. And that also will like forever be etched in my brain of like the first time I hit double digits being like, oh my God, this is so much running. I am amazing. And I feel like those milestones are always going to be very, very sweet to me in terms of like, I've had some like fun races and great long runs and amazing adventures, but I don't know that anything will ever compare with the first time I ran a mile or the first time I ran 10 miles without stopping.
Oh, I feel I'm going through nostalgia scrapbook in my head right now. I remember in track and field in high school, I would usually do middle distance. And there was one day that they lumped middle distance training into the long distance training. And so they were like, okay, 400-meter sprinters, you get to go on a 6-mile run. And I was like, absolutely not. I can't do that. It was
6 miles.
So dramatic.
Is that humanly possible?
It's truly, though. I was like, how are they doing it? And we whined the whole time, probably didn't even try, but that will forever stick in my mind as my first 6-mile run.
Yeah. Yeah. We all start somewhere. I had the benefit of starting early enough, far enough back in history that we didn't have social media and smartphones or smartwatches. I just had a Casio. So for all I knew, I was setting world records every time I went out there.
Oh, yeah. I would go back. I would go to mapmyrun.com and try and remember all the turns I took.
Oh, shout out Map My Run.
Do they still exist? Is this a thing?
Not anymore. I think it was like invented by the guy that ended up buying and reconfiguring Outside Magazine.
Wow. Rest in peace.
Map My Run.
Good times.
So, good times.
What was your relationship like with fueling back then? Because when I'm thinking of that era of my life, I mean, the raw amount of bagels and Pop-Tarts I would eat before track practice. Like, I mean, there was no rhyme or reason, no formula. I was just shoving down whatever picky eater foods I had in my mouth and not thinking about it. What was it like for you?
Yeah. So I started like running more seriously, like actually training with any kind of intention when I was in college, and I was actually in recovery for an eating disorder. I have this fascinating, like my eating disorder was like kind of decoupled from actually starting running. So for me, running became a way of better getting to know my body, getting to understand it and respect it in a different way that was sort of like an on-ramp for recovery. I think that now I have a more nuanced view on like, you eat no matter what. You eat because you're a human, not because you're training for a half marathon, and have like advanced past that stage. But I think it was like a pretty helpful heuristic at the beginning. And unfortunately, I think that because I was also raised in diet culture, I had ideas about like, well, the best amount to eat is the least that you can get away with. And this was also back in the day where there was like one type of gel, which didn't make it extremely tempting to try to do high carb fueling. I would run marathons with like gels and like a couple gels, gas station candy, zero intention, zero plan. It's honestly a miracle I made it as far as I did without like a devastating injury or like a traumatic blow up in a race. But I do remember it was actually pretty like maybe about a couple years into my ultra running career that I think I started fueling the way that I needed to, which was more, where I switched my perspective from you tolerate the fueling, I'll do as little as possible, as little as I can get away with, the bare minimum. I won't bring much intention to it. Like I tried to run the Leadville 100 with just tailwind and like some cereal and gummy bears, which is really unhinged behavior. Yes. So that didn't work extremely well for anyone wondering at home. But I eventually switched over to like, actually, how much can I eat while I'm out here? And I distinctly remember the first time I did this was at a 50-mile race, which is also a very bold time to test a whole new nutrition strategy. But I was also like, oh my God, I had no idea that running ultras was like this easy. Like it made doing long runs, doing workouts, doing ultras feel like it felt like I had been playing on hard mode without knowing it. And then like I got brought down to like being able to play it on like beginner mode, but being able to do these incredible things, they just felt way easier and more fun.
I have had the same experience. Carbs are just amazing. They're so good.
They're
so
amazing.
Good. And I really wish that this information on how to fuel your body were more available to teenagers, like imagining your volleyball self and my track and field self. Because in college in particular, I wasn't I don't know, I played ultimate frisbee. I wasn't running competitively, but I ran for myself. And I ended up abusing running to the extent that it was very mindless. It wasn't mindful running. I was doing it to like control everything and not feel anxiety and not eat enough and all of that. And I ended up being injured pretty much constantly, stress fracture, IT band syndrome, all of that. And never once after these like MRIs, all these doctor visits, nobody asked me whether I was eating enough. And it didn't even occur to me that the reason why I'm missing my period is because I'm not eating enough. They just didn't ask. They didn't tell me.
Yeah, no, I had the same experience. I had gone into a doctor because I wasn't menstruating and they were like, weird. Which like is wild now to think about,
take some free
because
condoms,
the conversation. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think the good news in there is that our cultural script for these things has advanced a lot. And now, like, whenever I talk to younger women getting into the sport, like, people are curious about, like, how far can I push the fueling? And I feel like it's talked about not as, like, some auxiliary part of the training, but as, like, the main event and the main way to do well at races. And one of the bigger cornerstones of preventing injury too.
Mm-hmm. I think my favorite evolution I've seen around fuel is seeing people brag about how much they eat. I mean, it's especially in trail running, everyone's like, here's everything I ate for my 15-mile run. And you can rank your different gels and you can tally up how many carbs can I get to. It's like competition of fuel. And I love that.
Yeah, exactly. It's the total opposite of, I think, what things looked like when I came into the sport, and I couldn't be happier about it.
Can you think of anything else from your earlier years running that you wish you knew more about?
Running easy. I think it probably took me until, I don't know, maybe honestly 2 years ago to really embrace easy days easy, because running easy is actually really hard. And by this, I mean running easy enough that, I could speak in full sentences, like a true, like 4 out of 10 effort. And like you sort of hinted at, a lot of times the ego can drive the ship in training because it feels good to run fast. It feels good to have like a sexy Strava file that people are going to bang that kudos button. Like, it feels nice to run fast enough that you can make your brain be a little bit quieter for an hour or so. And I realized when I was actually able to slow down and like run at the appropriate effort level, I could sustain so much more training, and I looked forward to run significantly more. I think there was a part of me that always used to get a little anxious around workouts or a little anxious around long runs because I knew I was maybe carrying a little more fatigue from running too fast. And I just hadn't built the confidence of like truly knowing that I had a huge aerobic base just from like embracing that shuffle life. So my like guidance for newer runners would be like, really take the run easy thing serious. Like, it is transformative. It will make the running more fun. And it really just allows you to reap the benefits of the adaptations you're trying to target.
I first started training for a 50K race before, it was the season before pandemic happened. And I was doing the thing where you just Google or probably go to like Pinterest and you're like 50K training plan. And it's just a bunch of random numbers on a chart that don't make sense. And I was like, great, this sounds great. No, nothing about time on feet, nothing about effort, literally just random mileage is thrown onto a chart. And I kept getting injured and I could not, I was dreading my workouts. I was fatigued all the time. I was like, is this what running is like? And so when I switched it and started practicing so that 80% of my time running was spent at like an all day pace, like truly I could just hold this for hours and talk on the phone while I go, like that's when I stopped getting injured. That's when I got a really healthy menstrual cycle. And that's when I genuinely look forward to every single run because I know that I don't have to kill myself trying to get there.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think like I, again, made the same I wouldn't say the mistake. Like, I think when I first started doing trail and ultra running, I was like, I'm not taking this that seriously. I don't need a coach. I don't need a training plan. I'm just going to wing it. And that worked until it didn't. And I think the mistake I made early on was thinking that having too much structure or having a coach or having other people be involved with my training and having a specific thing to do on any given day would take the joy out of running. I was worried that like surrendering that agency would make running less fun. And at that time I was not an elite athlete and I was like, I'll never be an elite athlete. I don't need a coach. That's for people who are trying to like win the Olympics, I guess. And when I finally did end up working with a coach, that was all as transformative as good fueling, because I was able to run more and do the things that really mattered to me better. So sure, I ceded a little bit of agency in the form of like, well, this person's going to tell me how far to run on what day. But when I was able to like really embrace the structure, I have found that it made me love running even more, because I was able to do it healthy. I was able to do it with less fatigue. I was able to do it with more competence and confidence. And for me, being able to really go into things like that with joy, with confidence, is where the magic is.
How do you know when a woman is ready for coaching? Like if somebody's listening and they're like, I'm kind of trail curious. I watched Rachel Entrekin run the Cocodona 250. Now I want to be a trail runner too. At what point is it time to invest in a coach?
I think if you want to get better, which can be really any time. I've worked with people who are total beginners on a walk-run program to women. I coached an athlete who got 7th at the Javelina 100. And the principles don't change immensely. I just think it's always helpful to have someone in your corner who believes in you, who's going to help you make complicated decisions around your training. I think what I misunderstood early on is I thought like I would be hiring like a benevolent dictator who's going to tell me exactly what to do. But what good coaching actually is being curious about your athletes' values, like what lights them up, what their goals are. How do you create enough structure that they can adapt and advance in their training without it feeling like it's not a part of them, like it's not in conversation with what their life looks like, what their stress looks like, with what they like to do on the weekends. And so I think it's this thing of like when you see just a little bit of that control, you're able to get so much more in return. And I believe it helps people of all levels. Like, honestly, if I could go back in time, I would have started working with a coach way sooner, because again, it just made the running more fun. I could have skipped a bunch of injuries. I could have skipped a bunch of navigating the imposter syndrome of thinking I'm not good enough to do this, or I'm not, fast enough to deserve having a coach. And when I finally did start working with a coach, it didn't make me like hugely faster right away, but it almost acted as this permission structure to be like, you're investing in yourself and you get to take this seriously now. And I feel like that mindset shift is what really opened things up for me. And then eventually I did go on to become an elite athlete. And I feel like if you want to compete in the women's field as it's evolving now, you really want to have someone else in your corner checking you, looking at your data, who's also interested in your values, interested in who you are as a person, and finding ways to push the envelope on all of that.
One thing I've noticed is coaching helps you learn the rules so that you know when to break them. And I've noticed this you have donated your coaching expertise and time to the runners of our first 50K Sisterhood. And it's been really fun for me. I'm not running this as a part of the scholarship, but I'm kind of just like managing this community. So I get to see what they're talking about during your coaching calls and after your coaching calls and what their follow-up questions are. And it has been so cool because they're like, oh, well, on the Microcosm call, we learned about time on feet. So actually, it's not a big deal if I don't hit X amount of mileage. I'm allowed to go for this much instead. Or I'm going to swap this in for a bike ride because it follows the principles that Microcosm taught me, and I don't have to worry about hitting this exact metric for running. I mean, I just think it's been really transformative for these 15 women to realize like this is the science of what we know about trail running and performance. And here's why you don't have to take it so seriously all the time.
Yeah. And what I always tell my athletes is like, it's not your job to shove the training into your life. It's my job to make the training make sense for who you are now. And if it feels like something's not clicking, that's a problem that we get to solve together. That's the whole assignment. And I think, like you said about breaking the rules, I think not great coaching coaches people towards dependence, towards feeling like they have to always obey the coach, feeling like the coach is setting a bar they have to reach. Otherwise, their training's not effective, or they're not worthy, or they're disappointing someone. I think bad coaching or bad coaching relationships can look like a pass-fail assignment where the athlete starts to feel like the training is a referendum on who they are and they need to always ask the coach permission for things. And I think good coaching coaches people towards more independence. Like, I feel like I've done my job as a coach when someone, after several years of working with me, is like, I think I could do this on my own. Mm-hmm. Most people end up continuing to work with me despite having the knowledge, because it's good to have an objective check on what you're doing. I am a professional coach and I have a coach. The person who cuts my hair has someone else cut their hair because they know how hard it is to cut hair well. And I think that working with athletes to help them make better decisions rather than just being like a data dump or making it feel like training is a box for them to check, giving them frameworks so that they can make those decisions in their training. And I can always act as a sounding board and I can pass on information and share how I might think about approaching things. But ultimately, I think good coaching helps people do that better themselves. It's not just passing on that knowledge. It's giving them what they need to apply that in their training for them.
Mm-hmm. And this whole ethos is exactly why, I mean, Microcosm was the first company we reached out to about this first 50K Sisterhood program. And it was because on your homepage, there was something around it being like for humans, not just for athletes, not just for elites, but it's like, you are a human. We have a lot of moms in this program. We have a lot of people returning from injury. We have people from all across the country in all different backgrounds. Like, they're humans first. And I love that about
that. Yeah. I think for us, like, again, really centering the person, the individual, the human. I think that sometimes, especially if folks are newer to structured training, there can be that pressure to feel like, I have to find a way to make this work, rather than, again, working with your coach to be like, how do I make this work for me? And viewing all the things that make you, like, I'm a busy gal with like multiple jobs, and I have other interests outside of running, and I'm balancing things. And a lot of the athletes we work with are parents, they're partners, they're dog moms, they have complicated work lives, they are caretakers. And instead of having them see those as limitations, it is neutrally information. And when you understand it and know how to work with it instead of against it, can actually be your superpower. The fact that you bring all of this to the table as a person, like, we can tap into that to make you a better athlete, rather than viewing it as like, like, the childcare makes this really hard, or the obligations I have at home and at work make this really hard. I work with a lot of healthcare professionals who have profound caretaking responsibilities and challenging schedules. And there is always a way to work with that to make sure that it continues to serve the athlete, not just in their training, but ideally serve them in a way that when they do go to work, when they do come home to their families, when they do get to spend time with their kids, they're bringing the lessons they've learned in running. They're bringing the same appropriate frameworks. They're bringing that energy and confidence to the table too.
Speaking of confidence, I think we've talked about some of the physical benefits of getting a coach and some of the physical barriers maybe to really getting into running. What have you seen particularly with female runners? What are the more of those like mental barriers to getting into running?
It's wild. I think there are as a coach, and I coach people of all genders, there are pretty distinct patterns I see. And a big one I see with women is waiting for a sign to be ready to level up, to like sign up for the race, to do their first ultra, do their first 100K, do their first 100. Whereas dudes are more likely to just email me and be like, I signed up for Cocodona, let's do this. Whereas like a female athlete will be like, I was looking at my log and I was looking at my family schedule, and you become aware of how much so many women are carrying with them. And the fact that I think a lot of women do really try to wait until maybe they're over competent to do it. Whereas men have been socialized to be like, if I check, if I feel like I can, if there's any universe where I can do this race, I'm going to do it. And so honestly, my advice to women would be sign up before you think you're ready. Obviously, don't do anything dangerous and stupid, but don't wait for a sign from the universe. Don't even wait for your coach's permission. Like, you should be able to source that from within yourself. And I don't think I've never felt ready to run a 100, honestly. Like, I don't feel like it is a possible or normal thing until I'm at about mile 99.98 and I can see the finish line, but it feels doable. And so I think that not waiting for someone else to tell you you're ready, not waiting for, a certain mileage in your training or a certain benchmark or something exterior. I think if there's a goal that speaks to you and you feel genuinely excited about it in like an authentic way, go for it. Don't wait till you're ready. You're never going to feel ready. You're never going to get the perfect sign from the universe. You're never going to open a fortune cookie that has an ultra sign up discount code. Do the thing.
Yeah, do the thing. Oh, I'm looking at the bullet points that I wrote for when we announced the first 50K Sisterhood Scholarship Program. I'm thinking, how do you write about something that doesn't exist yet? How do we even know that anyone will be interested in this? And there were 5 bullet points that I wrote under, maybe you've thought about running an ultra, but you told yourself, I don't know if I can run that far. I don't know how to start training. I'm not fast enough. I don't see women like me doing this. There isn't anyone to train with. And, I kind of just put that there thinking like, oh, yeah, like this is what I've heard. This is what I felt. I did not expect like a dozen women to email me to say those 5 bullet points are constantly in my head. Like I have thought every single one of those. And I mean, I know this could probably be a whole other 3-hour conversation, but like, what do you think are those first steps maybe culturally in trail running to make those bullet points obsolete? Like, what does the industry have to do? What should races be doing? Or maybe like brands, what can we all be doing so that these women stop doubting themselves so much?
My first step would honestly be more generous cutoffs. I know that it can be complicated with permitting and volunteers. You have to have personnel, like safety reasons. You need a medic, like the longer that folks are out there. But a lot of people are really worried about cutoffs and that fear of being cut off and the potential shame and stigma of, having someone pull the plug on you, I think prevents a lot of women from signing up. So I think races that have more generous cutoffs are going to speak to women, and they may not even be chasing cutoffs. I have coached so many women that are nowhere near the cutoffs, and yet they are still concerned about the cutoffs. I have also done this. Like I have also, when making my split chart, like put the cutoffs on it and had my coach say, we do not need these numbers. Like these are not relevant for you. Like if they become relevant, you'll know. And so I think the like really practical suggestion is more cutoffs and potentially more formats where it's easy to crew and support. A lot of women, again, have profound family obligations. They're bringing kids with them to the start line. They're bringing partners. And I think creating an atmosphere where on the, really baller end of the spectrum, there's childcare available, which happens at a few races, and that's amazing, but it hasn't really been scaled. But I think creating a start and finish line scenario where just the logistics of it speak to the concerns that a lot of women have. Like, is there an area where my partner can hang out and like potentially crew me, or where my kids can hang out, and making it, I think that having more crew access as well, when you can see your partner, your kids, your supplies, your snacks out in the field, I think that's a huge confidence boost. And it can kind of remove the fear of like, oh my God, I'm just going to be out there for hours and hours and hours on my own. So those would be my practical suggestions. And then I think that in general, it's just, I think telling more human stories. I think there's a lot of the women's field on the elite side of the sport is blowing up, and we're seeing records get rewritten, and Rachel Intrican is amazing. And I think we also always need to celebrate the everyday women who are laying the foundation for the sport too. Like, we are both the sharp end of the spear and we're the whole dang spear. And I think that telling stories around the people who are overcoming immense challenges, who are balancing career, family, and training obligations and finding ways to still help it serve them. I think that being able to create a model for other women to follow. Like, yes, I always want to have those like aspirational, like, again, we all want to be Courtney. We all want to be Rachel. I need that in my life for sure. And I need the story of the like, physician's assistant who has 3 kids, a partner that travels a lot and is still getting their training done, even if it doesn't always look pretty.
I wrote an article about this 2 weeks ago, or I guess a bloggy post about it a couple weeks ago. And my kind of point of that post was like, you don't need to be Rachel Entrekin caliber to have just as impactful of a story. That's what we're doing through the Sisterhood program too, is we're helping them publish media that shows what it's really like to be a runner in a woman's body. Because my personal pet peeve with the trail running and outdoor sports industry as it comes to like apparel and gear and just brand products is that so much like the default story is just like, believe in yourself, try hard, do big things, get on the summit.
Like, I don't think we're in a confidence drought. Right. I think there's like very real barriers. And I think, again, like a lot of women feel that they're swimming upstream of culture. They're swimming upstream of logistics, and they're swimming upstream of a lot of the stories that we like to tell in this sport.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it would be like if brands told the stories of athletes who are like trying to get their period back, trying to figure out how to have kids alongside training. I mean, just thinking about the last few pieces that we published with our Sisterhood, like Teresita was talking about, she's on her feet all day as a chef and she's still trying to figure out how to fit in training. We have Kara, who kind of like was figuring out her new identity as a mom and how to return to running. There's Tiffany's like returning from a really bad hip injury, and she was watching her small daughter compete in a karate tournament, and it gave her this aha moment of like, oh my gosh, my daughter's already there without having even won. Why doesn't that apply to me? And so just like seeing all of these stories that are not just like believe in yourself, but they're actually getting like in the grit of it all. I just think there's so much more untapped potential in trail media around that. And I think actually Rachel Entrekin does a good job at balancing both. Like she'll share really vulnerable, honest stories and go set records, right? But my point is you don't have to set records to tell the really vulnerable story that makes people take action.
Exactly. I think it is that individual specificity. And I know that the word influencer doesn't exactly jazz a lot of people, but these women are influencers. They are wielding their influence to get more people into the sport because their specific stories of the job, of the family, of coming back from injury, of healing from Red S, that's what's going to actually resonate in their communities. Like a feel-good brand post of someone yelling, hey, ladies, be confident, when you know it's like written by like an overworked 22-year-old gal. Like that doesn't hit quite the same as like someone someone who goes to your group run and you actually understand who they are on a personal level. And they're doing this thing that maybe didn't seem possible a few months ago. And that, I think, is exactly the kind of stuff that makes other women say like, I could do this. Like, you don't need to be a celebrity. And in fact, I think that it's better to not be. I think that the way that everyday women show up in their lives, train imperfectly, talk about it, share about it, that I think is what's really going to grow the sport.
Just a few weeks ago, I had somebody reach out, an acquaintance, I guess, on Instagram to my personal account saying like, hey, I'm curious if you have any registered dietitian recommendations, because she had heard me talk about my past struggles with like disordered eating patterns on a podcast. And she realized like, oh, like if Angie's gotten a lot better, maybe I can too. And I was just like, oh, just crying now. But like, yeah, we're all influencers, I guess. Smash that like button.
Yeah. I mean, like in college, when I first was like taking my first little baby steps into recovery, I remember reading an article written by ultrarunner Ashley Arnold, who had won the Leadville 100. And that was like a dream. I didn't dream that I would ever specifically do it, but I was like, wow, that's a thing that women can do. Amazing. And she specifically wrote about her healing from her eating disorder. And that was really one of the key moments where I was like, I am committed to this recovery process because here is someone else who is a runner. We have this identity overlap. She's someone I really look up to, and the way that she's talking about this experience really resonates. And that was one of the things where I was like, oh, like committing to recovery will help my running. You should obviously be committed to recovery for the recovery reasons, but however, we can access people's motivation in those like early stages. Great. And it wasn't like she was doing anything special. She was just sharing about her experience. And and this was, like 12 years ago, before the cultural conversation, I think, was as open and as accepting. And I don't think I had ever publicly heard a woman I looked up to talk about having an eating disorder and disordered eating. And when I saw someone do that, I was like, oh, there's hope. Like, I'm not literally the only woman experiencing this, which now we know is a far cry from unfortunately, a far cry from the reality, but also every like shame that you have, every challenge, like every struggle that you are going through, there are so many other women navigating that exact same thing. And if we can get together, talk about it, problem solve about it, I think that that's what's going to radically reshape the sport into the future.
Yeah. I was just leading a storytelling workshop virtually, and I started off with like, I like love and hate this word storytelling because it's so buzzwordy right now and very much like, here's like how B2B sales on LinkedIn is like storytelling, whatever. And I was like, at its core, storytelling is you sharing something that happened to you and how it changed you, and at least one other person in the whole world thinking, oh my gosh, so it's not just me. I'm not alone. And so like, you know, it doesn't have to be this like big, grand LinkedIn post story. It can just be you sharing something vulnerable that will help another woman. And I hope that's what we're doing through this race and through these stories of these 15 women.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, I would love to get back to your own running career. So I think you were working at a shoe store, you said, and then you started getting into more elite racing. What was that transition like, and what were some of the highlights and lowlights?
So the reason I started running ultras is because I got a free entry to an ultra. And I was like, oh, the longest run I had done to that point was 16 miles. I was like, I can just double that. That'll be fine. I maybe am on the extreme other end of the spectrum of like, wait until you're ready to do things of like, I've learned to pump the brakes in terms of signing up for extremely long races. You know, we all have our own journey. Everyone needs maybe a little extra Zoe in their lives. And I can always use a little more of that. Like, let's think through what your capacity actually is. But I was working at this running shoe store and I got a bib to run the War Eagle 50K, which is this really fun 50K in rural Northwest Arkansas. And I went and kind of just ran it off the couch. I like had to buy my first ever hydration vest. I think I drank Tailwind and ate Oreos, which now I'm like, oh.
That doesn't sound bad to me. I might try that.
It's a bold strategy to, again, double your mileage. And I ended up winning the race. And I think it was the first time where I ever had the feeling in the world of like doing anything physical of like, I might be good at this. Cause like, I had spent my entire early life warming benches and getting bullshit made up participation trophies that I did not want. And for the first time, I found something that both truly lit me up on the level of like, if I had been DFL, I would have walked away from that race saying it was the best day of my life. And I had a great race result, which I think encouraged me to pursue it more because it really was the first time I feel like something clicked for me. And I was like, I'm pretty good at running long distances and eating snacks in the woods. And I ended up going to grad school in Boulder, which sort of escalated things even more quickly because I was around this whole community of people who had jobs, had families, but also were trying to take running extremely seriously, maybe even too seriously sometimes.
Boulder's a scary place for that.
Yes, it's a fine line. We're all navigating what that looks like. But it was really cool, especially to see other women that were like, no, I want to be pro at this. Like, not just I want to take this seriously, I want to be the best in the freaking world. And that rubbed off on me. And after grad school, I moved to Aspen to work for a public radio station and started trying to train even more seriously and attempted to run the Leadville 100 in my gummy bear and cereal days, DNF'd, but had that same thing of like, okay, this is the best day ever. Kind of a bummer that I ended up in an ambulance. Still the best day ever. And I still think I can be, despite all the evidence and despite literally everything that I've done and seen today, I think I could be good at this. And that sort of started this 6-year project for me to take a step back from the really long stuff, start to try to master 50Ks, get comfortable at the 50 mile. I'm pretty sure I skipped right over the 100K because I've got antsy, but I wanted to really try to approach the sport from a place of mastery rather than like, okay, I threw myself into the deep end at Leadville. That didn't work. I didn't feel like that was super in alignment with my values, even though it was really fun. And I think I have potential here, and ended up getting second at the Leadville 100 in 2024, which was a really exciting sort of bookend on that particular journey, because when I hired my first coach, I basically walked right up to David Roche and I was like, "Hi, I've never won anything. I've DNF'd the last 2 races I signed up for. Please help. Like, I have the most not good like resume ever. Like, please." And working with him for 6 years was life-changing. And the confidence and competence that I developed in working with him had these profound trickle-down effects. Like, I was showing up in my running in a much more focused and intentional way. And I was running in a way that was much more in alignment with my values. And that showed me how I could do that in other areas of my life as well. How can I be more intentional at work? How can I be more boundaried in my relationships? How can I pursue excellence in whatever the thing that I'm doing is? If I'm making a podcast or I'm making a cappuccino, what does it look like to be the Zoë that like can get second at Leadville when I'm making a cappuccino?
Mm. And during this time, was your primary form of work being a journalist? Like, how were you managing all that?
Yeah. I was being a journalist. I worked for a year at an NPR station in Aspen, which was amazing. And it's also really challenging to balance full-time work, especially as a journalist. You're kind of on call for things. You have to obey the story's timelines less than your own. If something happens, you have to put down what you're doing and go follow the news, which is amazing and exciting. And also maybe not the most incredible for trying to train consistently. And so I did get a little bit worn down by that schedule and ended up leaving NPR for what eventually ended up becoming Outside Magazine, but was first Trail Runner magazine, where I was much more in this culture of like, everyone takes their hobby extremely seriously. We write about this, and so we need to live it, and we need to have a real authentic connection to this thing that we're doing. And it was sort of the like heyday of print journalism, and we were making this beautiful thing. We were always talking about how to, infuse it with more energy and more beauty. And that eventually ended up getting rolled into Outside Magazine, which, again, like, I felt like bringing my athletic self to the table made me a significantly better journalist, because I knew I could write from it. I could like gut check and sanity check a lot of things. I knew what a lot of folks were maybe more interested in hearing about. And I ended up getting like a USCA coaching certification, NCSF strength and conditioning certification, not even just as much to facilitate the coaching, though it did, because I wanted to write about training theory, and I wanted to be able to more intelligently edit training theory articles, because there was also this immense pressure to like churn content out. And I'm a slow girly. I love trying to slow things down. I am a decelerator of things. Like, I am a spoke in wheels. And I wanted to be that check on things of like, let's slow down. Let's make sure the science is good. Let's make sure the writing is good. And let's actually just take a beat. But it was a pretty all-consuming job. And the shift from the heyday of print journalism to the whatever the opposite of a heyday is of insane social media driven clickbait extravaganza is, I probably lost myself for a little bit in there, because the work was so demanding, and because there was always this feeling of like, if you let your foot off the gas, you are going to be left behind. There's always going to be someone younger who will do your job for less money with a bigger smile on their face. And I struggled to balance things. I, for a while, was working on a TV show where I had to commute back and forth between Carbondale and Denver every week. And I was doing insane training things like trying to run laps around a Whole Foods parking lot before I would drive, or I would drive on I-70 in a snowstorm to get back to Carbondale and then try to squeeze in a little run. And that was not extremely sustainable. And thankfully, now I've been able to sort of create my own job where the running can take up as much or as little space as I want it to in a lot of ways. And it's not the be all end all of my job. I still write a lot about running. I'm still a coach, but I'm also an environmental journalist. And I host a podcast called Your Diet Sucks, which is tangential to running, but is much more about nutrition, science, and diet culture. And so I feel like in being able to not always have to be a runner, I actually get to show up more authentically as a runner in those places.
That's such a beautiful feeling. It's reminding me of that feeling of there's no cutoff for this race. more spaciousness in life.
Exactly. Spaciousness is exactly it. And being able to define your own space and do that on your own cadence. Because I think the thing that was tough about journalism is you're beholden to when things happen in the world. And I still am. Like, I'm still doing reporting that is like, I do a lot of public lands reporting. So in the current political climate, you're sort of on call for things, but rather than just doing like turning out a super quick news story, I'm more interested in how do we take this news story, run it through experts, run it through context, run it through science. And so it's sort of this deceleration process that is, I think, a better life fit. And I think it yields more interesting journalism.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Your Diet Sucks, are you learning anything from the Your Diet Sucks listeners about like hot topics in women's running today? Is there anything that surprised you from their feedback?
Yeah, I think that one of the most common questions we get is, how do I fuel during menopause? I think that's super normal because, I mean, half of all people are going to experience menopause. It is a very normal part of our lives, but it's not often talked about. Or if it is, a lot of times the way that it's talked about is like the scary thing that's going to like trash your body and make running so freaking hard. And the conversation, it's good that we're having conversations, but it's complicated. It's individual. It's pretty nuanced. And so a lot of women and folks experiencing menopause want like a plan. They want a way to address things. They want to be told, like, if you check these boxes, you'll be okay. And there isn't, that guarantee doesn't really exist. There isn't like a supplement stack that will resolve menopause for you. There isn't a recovery protocol or a weightlifting protocol, and there isn't a weight vest in the world that can prevent the inevitable march of time. And that's actually really beautiful, because menopause is not a problem to be solved. You do not need solutions. You need to navigate menopause. And so I think the most common question we get is, how do I fuel during menopause? Because a lot of people experience changes in body composition, which can be scary. And our culture is already not super chill with women, generally. Women aging. Yeah, right. Like, how dare you be a woman who ages? Like, we're not going to do anything for you unless, of course, we can potentially sell you something, in which case, please come over here and let me show you my supplement stack. And so helping women understand that, like, just because you're experiencing this, like, yes, your things are changing. That's totally valid. How you feel in your body, how you feel in recovery. There are real, genuine changes, and it's not always as big and scary as culture makes it. And you don't need to like reinvent the wheel and live a totally different life. You're still a human being. Like, you don't need to eat totally differently. You don't need to lift totally differently. You don't need to avoid aerobic exercise for fear of spiking your cortisol levels.
Do you have any other tips for women who are entering perimenopause and, they might be starting a several-year journey?
Yeah. Get good at listening to your body. It is going to communicate with you frequently in this phase of life, and respect that. I think that sometimes athletes, when we're younger, we can get away with sort of like, oh, quiet down. Like, I'll listen to you later. And you cannot get away with that as much during menopause. And I think, trailing off a tiny bit there.
Take your time.
Things to do, advice for perimenopause. I think that knowing that it's okay to have feelings about the changes that you experience, but that doesn't always need to dictate your behaviors. And again, don't try to make menopause, every facet of menopause, a problem that has to be solved. I've had athletes come to me saying, like, I know I'm going to slow down, or I know I'm going to have to restrict my calories. And no, like, it's complicated. Menopause is going to play out very differently for every individual, but I would be very skeptical of any narrative handed to you by someone who might be incentivized to sell you something through fear.
Yep. Let's play a quick game called, can you come up with a fun name for like one sentence coaching? Coach me in 10 seconds.
Insta-coach.
That's it, Insta-coach. Okay, Zoe, you are now Insta-coach. I'm going to give you a problem and you can give me your quick 1 to 2 sentence coaching advice. Ready?
Oh, I love this. Okay, let's go.
I'm like nervous for you. Okay. I have 2 toddlers at home, so I don't have any time to train for a 50K. What can I do?
Running strollers are expensive, but a really great investment in both your training time and a super fun way to spend time with your kiddos.
Sold. Okay. I have tried several training plans and I always end up injured, so I guess running just isn't for me.
I hear that. It's normal to be scared of re-injury, but working with a coach who can personalize your training plan and better account for your stress and adjust more on the fly can help you break out of an injury cycle.
I want to run a 250-mile race, but I haven't even run a marathon yet. What are my first steps?
Let's get really into fast packing and find some whole food options that make you excited to eat for 3 days consecutively.
Would you say that's the main challenge of a race like that, is the eating?
I would say, just the time on feet and the eating, because the problems that all these random things that you just can't find in training because you're not running 250 miles in training. So like your gait's going to get altered and then you get blisters in places you've never gotten blisters. You have to continually adjust your hydration and sodium in ways that we haven't maybe whack-a-moled in training. And so I think the primary skill for 200s is just problem solving because you're going to see problems that I don't have a solution for. And you get to go do it out in the field and then report back to me about what works.
Love it. Oh, you're good at this. Okay. I live in Florida and the race that I'm training for is a 50K in Washington State, which is really hilly. I don't have any hills near me. What do I do?
God bless. You're training in humidity, which we all know is the hardest thing on planet Earth to do. And you can do a lot with a treadmill to practice running uphill and some strength training to develop some eccentric strength, and combining some uphill workouts with some downhill oriented strength is about as good as you can do and will facilitate, I think, a pretty fun day.
I'm running my first 100-miler, which will happen overnight. I'm afraid of the night miles. Should I be practicing those or just go for it?
I would say practice it once, but it's not as scary as you might think. And it's actually kind of fun to live in the world that just exists in your headlamp. The world isn't actually any scarier when the sun goes down, but you do get to maybe be a little bit braver. So practice it once, but don't build it up in your head to be this whole big scary thing. It's still just running with a headlamp.
Okay, last Insta-Coach challenge. Carbs are really scary. How can I make carbs less scary?
Start with things that you enjoy. Go for a flavor profile that makes you excited, a texture that makes you excited. Maybe it's a cookie or a chip or a Sour Patch Kids, but start with something that feels good and familiar. Get comfortable with that and then titrate up.
I still haven't fully processed how magical the first 50K Sisterhood experience has been over the past few months, and especially after last weekend's race. So you'll have to wait for a future episode to hear more about it, as well as future opportunities if you want a Sisterhood trail running experience. For now, you gotta check out the link in the show notes that shows the 15 selected runners and the stories that they've shared over the months. Big thanks to TJ and Zoe at Microcosm for being our coaching sponsors too. You can find their info below as well. Before you go, I asked Zoe for any final words of wisdom for a woman who is trail running curious.
Don't wait to be ready. Hire a coach, sign up for the race, do the thing.
If you liked this episode, could you please do us a solid and share a link to my chat with Zoë with your friends? Sharing the See Her Outside podcast with others is the number one way to support us so that we can keep on creating episodes that help close the gender gap and diversify adventure media. A 5-star rating and review from you will help us keep creating episodes that inspire women and girls to share their own voices and adventures with others. See Her Outside is brought to you by the Alliance for Gender Equity in Outdoor Adventure, hosted by me, Angie Lake, and edited by Allison Castonguay. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe now so that you don't miss our future episodes. Until next time, go get outside.